This is a family favorite recipe in my cousin's house, and it certainly proves that the Swedes are not just good at furniture design. So I'm trying to pay a little bit of a tribute to my cousin Leah's beautiful Swedish meatballs here, which her boys, Colin and Aiden, love. And with my little one on the way, anything that's gonna be a family favorite, I'm definitely on board with. First step is I'm gonna soak our bread in some milk. So this is going to be a part of the base of our binding agent. I'm using a gluten-free bread. You can use your homemade bread if you want to. I'd try to encourage you to use something without seeds or with a finer ground sort of texture. So we don't want to add too many different textures to our meatballs. So this is going to soak for up to 20 minutes and then we can pull it apart. So we're going to soften our onions in some butter. So we're sort of going to sweeten and saute our onions before they even go into our meatball mix. Now I am making a serve, probably that would feed a family of 6, but if you've got 2 teenage boys like Colin and Aiden, I wouldn't be surprised if this is just a single dinner. So our onions are definitely softening and they've got a little bit of caramelization on them. So they're well and truly past the translucent stage. So I'm actually gonna take them off the heat, let them cool in the pan while I get the rest of the ingredients ready. So we've got our big bowl here. Everything is going to be put into here. So we've got our soaked bread. Now we could put it into a food processor at this point in time, make it all crumbly, but I think that we will be able to just sort of tear it up, mush it up enough with our hands. So if you've got a tougher bread, if you're choosing to use a sourdough or something really crusty, you might need to put a bit more elbow grease. You could chop it up or you could put it into a food processor. Now again, I'm not sticking true to Leah's recipe by using gluten-free bread, but I want to be able to eat it. I want to make sure that this is inclusive to our celiac friends and intolerant friends. So I'm kind of roughly breaking them up, knowing that I'm going to be mixing all of this with my hands again. So I'm not being too precious about getting them all the same sort of size. So we've got all of our milky soaked breadcrumbs in there. So we can pop our beef in. I like to use a combination of beef and pork, which is both traditional but really good for flavor. If you had a preference, either or, you could do that. If you wanted to use veal instead of beef, you could do that too. So we've got pork as well, all in there. Now our flavors for this one are nutmeg, cardamom, and black pepper. So you could do up to 2 teaspoons of black pepper or as much or as little as your family like it. It works really well with the cardamom and nutmeg. Now you could at this point add a little bit of salt if you like. There's going to be quite a bit in our sauce, so I'll let you use your own judgment. And then we've got 3 eggs. All right, 1 egg in. Again, just good practice to be in, breaking them into a bowl first, make sure there's no imperfections. So you can see that our bowl is quite full of all of these ingredients. Whilst we're getting in there and we're using lots of energy, we do want to be a little bit careful that it all stays in the bowl. So I'm going to give this a bit of a head start. So we'll add our now cooled caramelized buttery onion. So you can see that each of these flavors, whilst not big and bold, plays a very crucial, subtle role in the background of these beautiful meatballs, which is I think a part of what makes them so Moorish. All right, so hands in, we're making our meatballs sort of about 50-cent piece size in diameter, I guess. And it already smells good. The butter, the onions, the spices. So we want to cook these in batches in our fry pan in a little bit more butter. So as we don't overcrowd the pan and we can be in better control of the caramelization, making sure that every side is cooked. So I've just got a little bowl of water, make it easy for me to roll our meatballs so that it doesn't stick to me too much. I'm heating up a tiny amount of butter in my fry pan over sort of a medium to low heat, because I may as well not dirty something else, put them straight in the pan. And then we'll keep an eye on the order that we put them in, because that's the order we'll flip them in. So I've just batch cooked about half of my meatball mix. So I can cook the rest tomorrow night, we can refrigerate it, but that's quite enough for today's dinner. Now I've just dislodged all of the sediment that's at the bottom here, and our butter has become even more flavorful and a little bit nutty because we've sort of made it a brown butter. So I'm gonna add even more butter to that to create our sauce. So once our butter starts fizzing and bubbling, I'm going to add our buckwheat flour to create a roux, and this is gonna be the base of our sauce. So the butter and the flour acts acts as a thickener and as a stabilizer rather than just using beef stock or something else that's quite liquidy. It creates more of a gravy style sauce. I have my stock ready. So I am going to return our meatballs to this sauce once it's ready. So in with our buckwheat flour. You can see that it's fizzing, bubbling quite a bit now, and it'll start to pull together. So we really want to cook the flour out before we add any of our stock. So the more I stir it, I keep the boil down. So if I let it sit for a second, it's going to come back up to temperature. So I'm sort of knocking back the heat. So you might hear cooks refer to that. So you can see that the bubbles aren't quite as rapid whilst I'm stirring, and then as soon as I stop, they increase again. So this is a gluten-free flour, as I said, so it's not going to thicken quite as much as a traditional flour whilst cooking, but it will thicken further on cooling and sitting. A lot now that that's coming together. So again, we want to knock it off that heat. So the buckwheat itself is quite nutty in flavor, which you can really smell now that the stock has been added. So you can see I'm adding it slowly as I go to make sure it doesn't get too liquidy. You want to maintain control while you're stirring. And it's quite caramel in color because we used that leftover browned butter and we gave it a little bit more time. So we've used nearly a litre of this stock. If you need to use a little bit more or a little bit less, feel free to do so. Take it to the consistency that you like, knowing that it'll thicken even more on cooling. So they're going to receive a little bit more cooking time here. So if they're about 3/4 cooked, that is okay. Take them to the caramelization level that you like. So I'm just going to make sure that there's a little bit of space between each of those so that they are coated by that sauce. So I'll reduce the heat again, and then we'll add our sour cream and get ready to plate these little Swedish meatballs up. I'm going to be serving this with some mashed potato, beautiful steaming mashed potato, and some, you could choose lingonberry jam, or you could make some cranberry jam or jelly. But I can certainly tell you that with the use of the dried spices, this is going to become a winter favorite in your house. I really hope that I haven't changed Leah's recipe too much, but I think this is definitely one that you're going to want to try with your families in the winter or whenever you feel like it.